Honored to be joined by His Holiness Varsana Swami, who has been a member of ISKCON since initiated in 1972 by Srila Prabhupada. And then he took sannyas. Now he's been since 1986, so almost 40 years in the sannyas order of life. And he's one of the longest serving resident devotees here in New Vrindavan. Those of you that know, he could, I've heard him tell some of his stories about coming to Krishna consciousness. They're some of the most interesting and unusual stories. I don't know if he's going to tell us any of those tonight. We'll see how he's inspired. Most of us came by car. I think Maharaj came like by airplane that he flew himself. Or there's I don't remember it clearly, but there was something quite exotic on his coming to Krishna consciousness. But if you look, like when you see all the rolling hills of New Vrindavan, and then you see how where the temple is, how it's flat, some of the other areas is flat. Maharaj, in addition to being sannyasi, is probably like the best heavy equipment operator in ISKCON. So most of those hills that were flattened, that was his work. And he's been doing a lot of that type of heavy construction as a sannyasi, which we talked today about being renounced doesn't mean giving things up. It means doing everything nicely for Krishna. So Maharaj has really been an emblem of that for this community and elsewhere. And he also is very deeply immersed in Krishna, in Chaitanya Leela. And of course he knows so many stories about the history of New Vrindavan and Prabhupada coming here and so many wonderful things. So we're very grateful that Maharaj has joined us here this evening, and let's welcome him a nice big warm round of applause.
Haribol!
And a few Haribos. Haribol! Haribol! Haribol!
On behalf of Srila Prabhupada, I'd like to welcome you all to New Vrindavan Dham, to your retreat. It is our hope and prayer that the effects of the Holy Dham are enhancing and enriching all your devotional experiences and practices. This very special day, Vishwarup Mahotsav, and Srila Prabhupada took sannyas so that he could bring us the message of Krishna consciousness. Very special occasion. You know, the pastimes of Lord Gauranga had everything to do with the holy name. He was born during a lunar eclipse when everyone was united. High class, low class, Hindu, Muslim, everyone united in chanting the holy name to ward off the effects of the lunar eclipse. But the kirtan resounding throughout Nadia was really to welcome him. So as a baby, he would cry, and nothing could stop his crying except chanting of the holy name. And when the village ladies soon came to understand this, they would gather around to chant Hare Krishna, to see his beautiful moon-like face bloom into a big smile in appreciation of their chanting. He would make demands that were very difficult for Mother Sachi to fulfill. He would demand the moon in the sky, or a bird that flew across the sky. And he was very, would you say, temperamental. If he didn't get what he wanted, he would throw a potentially colossal temper tantrum, which nothing could subdue other than the holy name. When he was just big enough to stand on his own 2 feet, he would dance to the sound of the holy name. And the ladies who watched him dance felt, under the influence of his very graceful movements, that the whole universe was dancing with him. When he grew a little older, in the midst of that kirtan, when he was dancing to the delight of the ladies participating, he would run off into the streets, much to the concern of Mother Sachi, and return very quickly with gifts of prasadam, which he begged from whoever he passed on the street, and his irresistible charm would inspire them to give the best of whatever they had. And then coming back into the circle of kirtan, with his own little lotus hands, he would personally distribute to everyone who was chanting Hare Krishna to assure us all that if we simply surrender to his mission of chanting the holy name and distributing that, then he will take care of all our necessities, all our needs, personally. He was very restless and wayward, and he would only be really sober and apparently humble in the midst of one person who was Vishwarup, who was so saintly and so grave and so serious. And it was only Vishwarup who could see, he could identify the traits in his little brother Nimai, that this is a golden form of Gopal, who's performing his parallel pastimes here in Navadvip. Now Vishwarup is so immersed in the Krishna Katha, the Kirtan, the study of Shastra that transpired at Advaitacharya's academy, that he would spend his whole day there. The devotees, hearing from Advaita, and sometimes from Vishwarup, were so immersed in Krishna Katha, Shastra, Krishna Nam, that Vishwarup, he had no interest in going home for lunch. So Mother Sachi would send little Nimai to bring her big brother back for lunch. And when Nimai entered the assembly in Advaitacharya's academy to bring his brother home, whatever was going on, whether it was Krishna Kirtan, Krishna Katha, Bhagavat Katha, and the devotees were so immersed, but whenever little Nimai entered their midst, everyone felt silent, just mesmerized by his beauty, sweetness, and charm. And Nimai would pull on Vishwarup's chadar and tell him, Mother Sachi is calling you for lunch. And he would lead him out of the assembly. And the devotees would ask Advaitacharya, what is it about that child, Vishwarup's younger brother, Nimai, that everyone is mesmerized in his presence and they forget Srimad Bhagavatam, holy name, Krishna Katha, so mesmerized by his presence. Advaita said, I don't know. Now remember, Advaita Acharya, for years and years, was continuing to call the Lord down with loud cries reverberating through Vaikuntha, trailing off into sobs like a young child, pleading with Krishna, please come and save this world, worshipping his Shalagram Shila with Tulsi mantras and Ganges water, appealing to the Lord to come. And for many years, he didn't realize that the Lord had already appeared right next door. Because Mahaprabhu is the Chana avatar. It was only Vishwarup who understood who his brother was. But he didn't tell anybody because as Chana avatar, he came to experience the joy of devotional service. He did not want to be acknowledged and identified as the object of that service, Sri Krishna himself. Only Vishwarup knew that. Jagannath Mishra and Mother Sachi were concerned that Vishwarup doesn't appear to be really what they would consider balanced. All he cares about is Krishna Katha, Krishna Nam, and Bhagavat. So they thought that if he got married, if they made arrangements for his marriage, that might make him more balanced. And when he understood their intention on this very day, Navadvipa, as a sannyasi, Shankararanya. And many years later, when Nimai took sannyas and he ventured into South India on pretext of looking for his big brother. And then one day at Pandharpur, he heard that Sri Rangapuri was staying there at the time. Sri Rangapuri, disciple of Madhavendra, meaning his guru's godbrother, like his guru, he went for his darshan. And Rangapuri, a great disciple of Madhavendra, seeing the divine nature of Lord Gauranga, he asked him, where do you come from? From where do you hail? He said, Navadvip. Rangapuri said, oh, I remember Navadvip. I came there with my Guru Maharaj, Madhavendra Puri. And I remember in Navadvip especially, one Brahmin couple named Jagannath Mishra and Mother Sachi. They had a very saintly son who was so disinterested in anything and everything of this world that he left home for good, eventually arriving here in Pandharpur, from where he ascended back to Golok. I remember Mother Sachi's cooking. She would make this curry from banana flour. It was so delicious, I remember to this day. And Lord Gauranga's listening to Rangapuri telling of his experience in the house of Jagannath Mishra and Mother Sachi. And only it was when he completed his appreciations that Lord Gauranga said that Jagannath Mishra was my father. And Vishwarup is my brother. I've been wandering through South India searching for any news of his whereabouts. And now I've finally found closure. It's the day that Srila Prabhupada chose to take sannyas. for the benefit of all of us. How would we have ever heard Krishna Nam, Krishna Katha, Srimad Bhagavatam, had not Srila Prabhupada taken that great austerity? And he said that my Guru Maharaj wanted books. He told me, if you ever get money, print books and preach in the English-speaking world. So this day is very special to all of us. Soon, and you see now, Krishna's artwork, painting the trees, fall is here, Kartik is coming. Very special time to reside in the Holy Dham. I hope you can all come back. That was the time that Krishna returned to Vrindavan from Mathura. Just after his interactions with Kubja, who was really booming, who was hunchbacked because of the heavy burden of miscreant kings who were exploiting her resources. And Krishna saw her inner beauty and addressed her as beautiful lady, and he made her very straight and beautiful. And he was wondering what kind of feedback he would receive from Vrindavan about that pastime, and sure enough, very shortly thereafter, when Krishna was in his room in his palace in Mathura, before a table covered with letters that were so smudged with tears that they were illegible. He was writing daily to the Brijabasis, but didn't know how to address them, understanding the depths of their separation from him. When he heard flapping of wings, large wings, and he looked, and it's a very graceful swan landed on the perch where Krishna's peacock would land outside his window. And the swan was looking at Krishna in different angles. And Krishna could understand this is no ordinary bird, so he offered his respects. And the swan folded his wings and bowed down before Krishna. And he said, I am bearing a message from Lalita Devi. Don't fault her for speaking to a bird. Where else would a young girl confide about her concern for her princess? And then he began, Hansadutta, the swan, began to explain the condition of the Brijabasis. How Vrindavan had become like a wasteland since Krishna's departure. And the Brijabasis, they were on the precipice of leaving this world out of separation from Krishna. And Lalita Devi, whose letter the swan is narrating, is asking Krishna, will you return? And Uddhava is looking at Krishna with very yearning glance that I promised the Brijabasis I would bring you home, and you promised me, when will you come? And Krishna knew if he were to come, it would have to be soon, because Kamsa's two wives, who were daughters of Jarasandha, went back to their father and told him how, Kamsa was just simply, innocently watching a wrestling match, and Krishna murdered him. And now Jarasanda's daughters are widows. And he vowed to retaliate by exterminating the Jadus. And words were reaching Mathura that Jarasandha was already amassing a vast army in the east. And Krishna knew he's not going to attack once, 17 times. And he would eventually have to relocate the Jadus to an island in the sea, Dwarkadam. So Uddhava persuaded Krishna to return to Vrindavan, Prakarti. And when the Brijavasis in Vrindavan, which was like a wasteland in Krishna's absence, and the Gopas were just going through the motions of their activity like ghosts, and it was the cows who first saw two cloud-like figures riding in a chariot on the horizon, and their eyes were transfixed, watching the movements of that chariot. And then, when the breeze changed direction and those cows caught the fragrance of Gopal's scent, they went wild, galloping with their tails raised high in the air, their ears up high, and just running for the chariot. And the Gopas at first were confused. What happened to the cows? And then when they looked and saw the chariot, did they dare to believe that Krishna is home? He's come back? Krishna directed Uddhava how to drive the chariot through the sea of cows as it was rocking back and forth, as the cows were trying to reach Krishna. And he expanded into as many forms as there were cows to jump out of the chariot and address them all personally by name. "Oh, mothers, did you miss me as much as I missed you?" And all unanimously they agreed, The Gopas at this time are still stunned. Do they dare to believe that Gopal has actually come home? And Krishna was looking for one Gopa specifically, who wore a red turban and a yellow dhoti and had an ornate buffalo horn, Sri Dhamma, his dear friend, who would panic if he couldn't see Krishna, who Krishna would carry on his shoulders, because Krishna would lovingly lose the wrestling match with Sri Dhamma just so that he would carry him on his shoulders. And Queen Kunti and Kolavet Sridhar, so many great saints ever since have just marveled how wonderful is Krishna, that he carries his dear friend on his shoulders. Krishna ran to embrace Sri Dhamma, but Sri Dhamma couldn't believe it. He didn't dare to believe. Only when he felt his heartbeat resonating with Krishna's heartbeat, and then Krishna, he held him so close to his chest, and then he held him a little distance out so Sri Dhamma could see, and he told him, "Look, it's really me, I'm back." And then when it finally dawned on him, he began this kirtan. Gopal, Gopal, Gopal's back. He's come home to Vrindavan. And the kirtan that Gopal has returned. And they began praising Uddhava, who's he's a true hero because he kept his word. He brought Gopal back. And that kirtan resounded through the hills and valleys of Braj. Who would inform Nanda and Yashoda? The wind wouldn't even leave Krishna's side to deliver the message. But there was no need for anybody to deliver a message. Everyone could feel life coming back to the Holy Dham, which could only mean that Gopal has returned. So Krishna directed Uddhava to drive the chariot surrounded by gopas and cows to the palace of Nanda and Yashoda, where Nanda couldn't believe Gopal's back. And Mother Yashoda was simply stunned. And it was only when he fell at their feet and bathed them with his tears, which they knew were uniquely his. And Mother Yashoda bathed Krishna with the abhishek of her tears and milk. And Nanda still couldn't believe it. He embraced Gopal to his chest, but then he couldn't see him, so he'd held him out at arm's length, and then he's embraced him again before he really believed that Gopal's back. He's back, Vrindavan. And then Krishna would spend dawn and dusk with his parents, morning and afternoon with the gopas, midday and evening with the gopis. And Vrindavan, which had been like a wasteland in Krishna's absence, blossomed like a lotus in his presence once again. Until one night, every night, Krishna would have Rasa Leela with the gopis. And on the final night of Kartik, same general pattern. Krishna would leave the gopis to be with Radha alone, and they would search frantically through the forest. But Krishna took her some distance from Govardhan Hill to Mount Rohit, where there's a beautiful lake filled with swans and turtles. And while Krishna was speaking, joking with Radha, she saw a sage on the distant side of the lake. And she said, Krishna, who's that? He said, that's Ribu Muni. He's been performing tapasya there for 66,000 years to have my darshan. And she said, he doesn't even realize that you're here. And he said, no, his tapasya has led him to the verge of death. He's oblivious to the external world. So Krishna called out to him, Ribu Muni. And when he opened his eyes, and the form of the Lord who was meditating on him within his heart was before him with Radha, he ran over, offered his prayers, and then his body melted into a river which flowed down the slopes of that mountain. And Radha asked, why did he melt into a river? And he said that his body transformed into liquid prem, which will forever beautify the slopes of this mountain and proclaim the nature of our love for all souls to pursue in devotional service. And then, in the midst of kirtan, Rasa Leela that night, which was to the sound of kirtan, of course, when Krishna disappeared with Radha, and he also left Radha, but he didn't return to the sound of the kirtan like he did every other night. The gopis searched throughout the forest for the rest of the night. Nanda, Yashoda searched the village. The gopas searched the pasturing grounds. There's no sign of him anywhere. And they wondered, was that a dream that he came back to Vrindavan? Or was it a dream that he ever left Vrindavan? Or was it a dream within a dream? They couldn't decipher dream from reality. because they were so immersed in thoughts of Krishna that whether he was so-called physically present in his Prakat Lila or more fully manifest in their hearts when he was in Mathura or Dwarka, they couldn't tell. So then he returned to Mathura. And then 44 years later, when Krishna was in Indraprastha for Maharaj Yudhishthir's sacrifice, Rajasuya sacrifice, and the Brijabasis, they're receiving notice wherever Krishna is, and they're wondering, he's in Indraprastha, so close. Will he come home? But then Krishna received news that there was a great calamity in Dwarka. Shalva had attacked. So Krishna raced back to confront Shalva, and there was a fierce battle went on for many days. Finally, Krishna delivered that demon. And then Narada Muni appeared on the battlefield. With a letter from Dantavakra, challenging Krishna to fight with him at Mathura. Dantavakra was thinking that he didn't want to fight with Krishna at Dwarka because he'd have the support of the Jadu warriors, but if there was nobody left in Mathura, so he challenged to fight him there. And Krishna thought, this is great. I can go home. So he said, I accept the challenge. He returned to Mathura, fought with Dantavakra. And he likes to fight sometimes, so he made a drama out of it, but then separation from the Brijabasis overtook him, and he just finished them off quickly. And then Dantavakra's brother, Vidarata, to retaliate, he challenged Krishna, but he couldn't even fight with him. He just disposed of him because he wanted to go home. So Uddhava drove him to Vishramghat to take rest after the fierce battle. And the sun was just about to set, and the Brahmanas were performing their evening rituals in Yamuna, all praising Krishna for his return to Mathura. And Krishna asked one very senior Brahmana, who clearly was very pure, do you know where my father is living now? And the Brahmin told him, Krishna, when you told Nanda Maharaj in Kurukshetra that you would come home and, what he always says, tomorrow or the next day, he believed you. But on the way from Kurukshetra back to Mathura, he was becoming more and more depressed. And reaching Mathura, he couldn't even cross over to Nandagram. But he took up residence back next to Gokul. He couldn't even face Nandagram, where the feelings of that everything would just remind him and aggravate his separation from you. The Gokulpati, all he could do is stare down the road. He couldn't even face his subjects in Nandagram. The separation was burning so intensely. So the landlord of that village, Gokulpati, Maharaj Dana, so devoted to Nanda Maharaj, he offered his whole village to Nanda and said, my guards will watch the road for any signs of Krishna's return. You'll be the first one to hear. But, just be happy in my care until Gopal returns. So then Krishna was thinking, well, you have to change clothes. So he took off his crown and royal garb and Daruka, gave him a package that Uddhava had prepared, his pitambar, yellow cloth, and turban. And Krishna told Daruka, ford the Jamuna. And as they crossed over, Krishna couldn't even hear the neighs of the steeds or the galloping of their hooves or the hooves or the splashing. His heart was beating so loudly. And he tried to blow the conch shell to announce his crossing over, but he was faltering. He had to hold on to the standard of the chariots. The conch shell was blowing itself to announce that he's crossing over. And then there was, one group of gopis who just camped all those years on the side of the river. They wouldn't even go to the town, waiting for Krishna's return. He came and greeted them. Then Maharaj's guards informed Nanda that Krishna's coming. And there was great festivities, and Krishna returned to Gokulpati. So was he happy? No. Because he was troubled by the promise he had made that he would marry the gopis. But now they're all married. He thought, well, how can I even face them? And Krishna thought, this is a dilemma that I can't resolve. And he concluded that only the Dham can resolve this puzzle for me. So one night, when he couldn't sleep, so troubled by how he would fulfill his promise, through the door came Purnamasi, Brindadevi, and Madhu Mangal. And he revealed his torment. And Purnamasi, she'd also been visiting Mother Jashoda, who revealed her heart's desire, which, from the day she met Radha as a baby, she was cherished. The thought that only she could be the wife to her Gopal. But how is this possible? The gopis are already married. And then Purnamasi burst into tears. This is all my fault. It's their marriages. But then she smiled. But they're not actually married. By my mystic potency of Yoga Maya, I created duplicates. The original gopis never married. They're waiting to marry only you. Their duplicate forms married other gopas. But Krishna said, but the general population's not aware of this. So, if you created that illusion in like a dream, it's real to them because these gopis have been living with their husbands for all these years. So then Purnamasi said, well, why don't you just kidnap Radha? And Krishna, like you did Rukmini. Well, how would that work? Where would I take her? Besides, Rukmini wasn't married. Radha appears that she is. So then Purnamasi said, she told Nanda Maharaj, you have to hold a big, like a town meeting, but call everybody from throughout Braj. And all the clans came from Govardhan, from Gokul, from Nandagam, from Raval, Sanket, Yavat. They all assembled at the base of the steps to King Vrishabhanu's palace. And Purnamasi gazed over the assembly and she told Nanda Maharaj, there's some important citizens who are not present here. He said, no, everybody's here. I said, no. And then Purnamasi directed some ladies to go to the houses of the gopis who were standing beside her. He said, go see what's going on in their homes. They ran off and came back with their eyes wide open. What is it? These girls who are here in the assembly are still in their homes performing their duties to their families. He says, well, go bring them. They didn't know what kind of mystery was unraveling, and they were terrified to be implicated. But Purnamasi, no, it's okay. So they ran off and brought back the same gopis who were assembled, besides Purnamasi. Now, these gopis were not aware that they had duplicates. So when they looked at their duplicates and the duplicates looked at them, they were completely perplexed. And then just to give more full credence, Purnamasi sat in meditation and invoked Yogamaya, Krishna's sister, born to Mother Jashoda, which she didn't even know. So Vishnumaya, with 8-armed form, hovering above the ground, not quite touching the ground, first went to Nanda and Jashoda and paid her obeisances because they didn't even know that they ever had a daughter. And then she said, have all these gopis and their duplicates stand side by side. And when they did, everyone could see there was a very slight, subtle difference in beauty, luster, and sheen in the eyes between the originals and the duplicates. And she said, the originals are still waiting for Krishna to marry them as he promised. The duplicates will continue serving their families as usual. So then everyone's so happy that this whole ordeal can be resolved. Until Srimati Radharani stepped forth in a very solemn mood and proclaimed that there are still some critics in the audience who have always been and always will be critical of my relationship with Krishna. And I cannot allow that stain of criticism to enter Nanda Maharaj's palace. So, let it be known that if in thought, word, or deed, in sleeping or waking state or sleep, we have ever deviated in chaste thoughts for the son of Nanda Maharaj only, then let us follow in the footsteps of Sita. And then Durvasa Muni appeared. And he looked at her and he looked at the audience and he did not tell you all that she is perfectly chaste and pure? But if she wants to do this, I'll facilitate. But be assured, neither the fire of hell, nor the fire of the apocalypse, nor the inferno of a volcano can so much as scorch a hair on her head. He took a clump of hair from his head, threw it down. It erupted into a huge inferno, and Radha and all the Brijabasis had to back so far off, and then Radha, with her palms folded, Krishna's name on her lips, her form in her heart, entered the inferno, followed by all her friends, as everyone in the assembly was gasping and fainting and nearly dying, until she came out the other side, looking very cool and soothing and more beautiful than before. And then the festivities were made for Krishna to marry all the gopis. And Mother Jashoda seemed to expand into 16,108 forms to prepare all the rooms in the palace for her new daughters-in-law. And King Vrishabhanu and Kirtida explained to Krishna very, very seriously how to please and protect their daughter as she made her way off to Nanda's palace to live happily ever after with Krishna. So is Krishna happy now? He asked Nanda Maharaj, are you happy now that I'm home? Because the biggest threat to Nanda Maharaj was not all the demons that attacked Braj, it was that chariot at the palace gates, which meant that Krishna could leave any time. So it was his desire, and more so Mother just showed us that Krishna married. So he said, I've come home, I've married, are you happy now? And Nanda Maharaj said, no. Krishna said, why? Because you're staying here in Braj means that Vasudev in Dwarka is going to have to experience the same separation I did. And his sorrow will diminish my joy. And Krishna, I know you've done all kind of miraculous feats. If you could somehow be present with him like you are with me, then only would my heart find peace. And Krishna said, no problem. And right before Nanda's eyes, Krishna expanded into his Vasudeva form. To board the chariot with Daruka to return to Dwarka with Vasudeva and Devaki. And that wasn't his only miracle for the day. He told Daruka, now you have to expand the chariot really large because it's time for the demigod expansions who entered into the Brijavasis for the sake of Krishna's Leela to return not to heaven but to Vaikuntha. So the chariot expanded, all the gopas and gopis and cows and deer and peacocks and swans and birds all boarded the chariot, and it ascended beyond the heavens from which they'd come and landed in Golok to be greeted by the song of Krishna's flute. So, in the end, after all the dramas and traumas and pains of separation, everything in devotional service culminates in transcendental bliss. And that ecstasy is all contained in the holy name, which Srila Prabhupada took sannyas today just to bring to us. When this sound of the holy name takes root in your heart, the form of the Lord appears in your meditation, and his associates, entourage, holy Dham all expands from the root of the holy name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Holiness Varsana Maharaj ki
Jai.
Vrindavan Dham ki
Jai. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Maharaj.
So, Prabhus, we have